Okay, so hi, I'm Taylor Stocker. I'm here on Path of Nerve Radio to interview Col Gerard about his new single, The Way I Feel. So, before we get into your new single and stuff, can you just tell me more about yourself, like how you got into music? Has it always been a passion of yours, or did you kind of just fall into it?
No, I'd say it's always been a passion. Yeah, I started really young. I came from a family of people that were in the entertainment world. My mum was an actress. My father was he passed away when I was two, but he was a writer and a director. My brother was into stage and jazz. So it was sort of an easy step for me in a sense. But I originally was I got signed to a publishing deal when I was 18, and that lasted about 6 months, and they dumped me. And then I decided I got signed to a record deal after that, and that didn't work out. So then I got a job, or another job, I should say. I've been working since I was a kid. And then I started a company, and then I opened it up in a bunch of countries. And then about 10 years ago, I decided at the age of, was I 34, whatever like that. And I said, that's it, I've had enough. I jumped on my motorcycle and went to Italy and went to film school, and then I started making some short films. And then about year and a half ago, I ran into somebody named Zita McHugh, who turned me on to a producer named Chris Potter, who listened to my stuff. Chris Potter has worked with, he's did all the stuff for The Verve and Richard
Mhm.
Ashcroft and Stones, a bunch of other people. So he's a really top fella, and he said, "This is great, but I want to do it with a band." Which was great for me because I'm all into musicianship more than any other thing. I love great. The only the people I love to hang out with the most, even though they can be the biggest pain, is musicians. I
Mhm.
love great musicians, good players, people that can really. I mean, my biggest fans are things. My biggest. I'm a big fan of things like the Funk Brothers, who was like the backing band for Motown.
Mhm.
They're such great musicians and stuff like that. So I started back into it about a year ago. We recorded an album. We're going to do another one in May, and deciding whether to stay on the independent route now or possibly. There's three different record companies kind of zooming around at the moment, but we'll see how it goes. You never know. A lot of chatter. But I wanted to decide sort of which direction to say independent or go with a record company or something like that. So, but I'm really happy to be doing music again more than anything. I'm a music freak, fan, whatever
Fair
you want
enough.
to call me. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you've all got it all going on and plan and where you're gonna go. And you clearly were made to be a musician. If it's always been in your family, then
Yeah, it's always been in the family, I guess. I did learn a lot actually from my older brother. He was into a lot of things I wasn't into, like jazz and well, mainly jazz. Actually, he's a massive jazz fan, Bill Evans and that sort of stuff. And I was into more R&B and soul. I'm a huge Marvin Gaye fan. Earth, Wind and Fire, Aretha Franklin. And these are the people that I aspire to sound even marginally like. It
hmm
would be fantastic, yeah. But yeah, I'm really into my music and really into my musicianship. That's really a big
hmm
deal for me, like a really big deal having somebody. And that was why I really like Chris Potter so much, because he said, no, we got to do this with musicians. So that was fantastic. Yeah.
No, I think that's amazing in a world where more people are just using laptops or AI to create music. You've got to keep it in the
Well,
roots and
I'm
just
not
get everyone in.
anti-sample. I'm not anti-sample, but it's just not for me. I just find I'm just hearing. I really like Dua Lipa. I love her voice. She's got a
hmm
pretty brilliant voice. But the other day I'm hearing a track and I'm like, oh, that's in excess. Nah, it's not. It's Dua Lipa. But yeah, horses for courses. Music's music, right? It's all going to be what's old is new again. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
fair enough.
that's that's the bottom line. And hopefully, I create something that's original enough for people to say, I might have heard something similar to that before, but that's different, and I like that. I mean, I met some because of my mum. My mum was an actress, and I met a lot of interesting people when I was young. And I wish I'd had a camera back in those days. But probably the person that really, out of all the famous people I met from her, the person that took my breath away the most, and she was just an incredible individual, was Ella Fitzgerald. And I
hmm
was only little when I met. I was a tiny thing. We went backstage afterwards, and she said, "Oh, come over here and give me some sugar." And she was so sweet to me, so kind and so nice. And then she would get on stage, and this beautiful sound would come out of her throat, and you would be like, "Oh my God, where does that come from?"
Yeah.
So as you can tell, I'm kind of in awe of people with that kind of talent. Anyway, but that's
So I want to talk about your song "The Way I Feel." So I've seen that you said that you sort of wrote it 20 years ago and then came back
I
to it.
did actually,
So
yeah. When I was really young, I wrote that song. Yeah.
yeah. So can you like take me back 20 years and like sort of explain the song and what inspired it?
What inspired it actually? I was walking down Regent Street, I think it was at the time, and there was a big demonstration on.
Hmm.
And I actually honestly cannot remember what the demonstration was about, but I remember seeing this BBC interviewer interviewing these people, and they were asking them about this demonstration and what their thoughts were.
Hmm.
But the only thing that people could talk about was their feelings and not the facts. The
Hmm.
real, what really was about. I mean, the
Yeah.
other day was quite funny. They did a thing about the migrants, and they had all these people on there, and this guy was going up to them and saying, "Okay, so how many are you willing to take in your house?" They'll protest all day, but then they say, "Oh
Hmm.
no, I can't take anybody. My flat's too small. Oh, I rent. I can't do it." When it comes down to the bottom line, it's great to protest. So there's a line in the
Yeah.
song that says, "What's the use of going out protesting for the people when you haven't got a clue yourself?"
Hmm.
And so it kind of resonates, I suppose, today also. But that's basically what the song was about at the time, and it was the way I feel. So
Fair enough.
yeah.
You kind of answered my next question was like, what was your writing process for that? But I guess because it was inspired by something you saw, did
It
you
was inspired. That's
just go
rare
away?
for me. Yeah, that is
Yeah,
kind of rare for me. I tend to write the music first.
fair enough.
Yeah, I tend to write the music in the top line. I'll write a melody for a top line. I
Mhm.
mean, I used to read music. I don't anymore. It's still sitting on my piano. It looks fashionable, but I can't even tell what a
Yeah.
black note is anymore, or a white note, or a wrist note, or that note, or a quarter note. But normally I write the music first, and then the
Mhm.
lyrics come afterwards, which is a bit painful sometimes. But if I tend to have a kernel of an idea, like word, like the way I feel, or something like that, that can also set off a song too for me. But 9 times out of 10, I would say it's the music comes first. That's for sure.
Definitely, definitely. So I know that you said you work with Chris Porter for the whole album. How was that? Was that like
Chris
walk
Potter
me through the
is
whole
phenomenal. Yeah,
process?
he's just a great guy to work with. He asks you what you're after
Hmm.
instead of telling you what you should be doing.
Hmm.
And that's what I like about him. Most producers, a lot of producers I know, they'll tell you this is the way it needs to be, this is the way it's got to be. But he'll sit down with you and actually say, how do you want to craft this song? How do you want to set this song up? How do you feel about the song? Should it have a faster beat? Sometimes we want to speed it up, sometimes slow it down. And I did give him a lot of songs. Probably 4 songs were written brand new. The other 8 were all in my catalogue, as they say, which is about another 200 sitting in there. So I'm all right for the next few years.
Yeah.
Um, so I can release an album a day for the next 2 years. Um, but he's got such a great way of dealing with you. He's so relaxed and he's very laid back, but he's also very intuitive when it comes to your music. He'll look into your music and say, what do you think's going to work better there? And how does that feel for you? And how do you feel about that? And I have to say, I basically sat back most of the time and let him do everything because I don't think, I used to, even in my business, I used to say, if you're going to hire somebody to do a particular job, let them do their job.
Yeah. From the album or just from the single, what do you want fans to like feel when they listen to your songs, and what do you want them to take away from your songs? Like,
Well, more than anything, I would hope that people would find the songs personable for them. There's
mhm.
something in there that says, that's me or that's part of me. And I try to write that way. I try to feel like I really love a good melody. That's really important to me, a great melody. But at the same time, lyrics have come to a level now that people want to feel something. Sometimes they'll hear it, I mean, without being disrespectful, they'll hear a really song, but the lyrics are
Mhm.
great. Or the
Mhm.
music could be great and the lyrics are I mean, I always like the quote from Noel Gallagher. I wrote a super respect for that, and it may sound like it's being dismissive, but I understood his point. He said, "Lyrics aren't important to me; the melody's important to me."
Mhm.
He said, "People will find what they want to find in my music,"
Yeah.
and I like that. He said, "Listen, some of my lyrics make sense, some of them don't. It doesn't matter, but it sounds great," and that's always the thing I'm always trying to find.
Mhm.
I always liked Elton John and Bernie Taupin because
Yeah.
Bernie Taupin, for some reason, would always find these ways. If you go through that album of his from whatever was it, like 50 years ago now, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and you go through the lyrics of it, they're all quite almost like pop art in a sense. There's a part in there that you can grab hold of, and he says Goodbye Yellow Brick Road and that sort of stuff. But those little things in there are what people grab onto
Mhm.
sometimes. Just that one line or that one word or that one thing that somebody said. And that I really like. If someone can listen to something I've done and say that I feel good about that, or I like that, or I like the sound of that, or it makes me
Mhm.
feel good when I hear it, then that's good enough for me.
That's fair enough. I completely agree. I think you're so passionate about music that it shows through in your music, and I'm quite excited for the album to come out. Out of like the songs you released so far and the
Hmm.
album that you've got to come, which one would you say is your favorite, or I guess most excited for people to hear?
I was really excited for people to hear the song "Sun and Sky" because that was a
Yeah.
new kind of song. I wrote that song in a new way. It was something different for me, instead of sort of doing, because as a songwriter, sometimes you fall into patterns, and they're
Mhm.
not always good patterns. So sometimes you'll hear a record by a band, and you'll hear six of the songs sound the same in the record. It's not that it's not by design normally.
Mhm.
A musician's not going to do that normally by design, but they fall into these sort of comfortable traps where if I push that up from the A major to the C major, which I do a lot and that sort of thing in those particular keys, but still, and you fall into those traps. And Sun and Sky was a different song for me. I'd just written a couple of little bits and pieces, brought it into Chris. He said, "No, let's work on that." And also, Common Over was the same that way too. I'd come up with a melody at the beginning, that one melody on the track, and that was
Mhm.
it. And then we just formed the song around it, and that was a really new experience for me. So the one song I really, probably more than anything that stands out for me in the record is Sun and Sky.
I love that. That was your debut single, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's kind
We're
of
gonna probably
beautiful.
pump it out again. It hasn't gone it's done okay. I don't. It's kind of hard to say what's done well and what hasn't
Yeah.
done well these days. And of course, you want the billion streams, you want all that kind of stuff. It's great, but at the end of the day, really, kind of the best thing for me, the only thing I really like about Spotify, quite frankly, is the fact that I can find out where all my songs have been played.
Mhm.
And that to me, if there's a certain amount of joy, it may only say one time for the Bahamas or one time for
Mhm.
Cuba or one time for this. But for me, I'm like, there's some little geezer all the way down in Cuba that decided to spend
Mhm.
1 minute listening to me or whatever he did. And for me, that's worth it. I really, truly think that's worth it.
Mhm.
I think it's worth it to know that somebody spent, even if it's a couple of seconds of their day, to put me on their mind and listen to what I've got going. And for me, that means the world to me, to be quite honest.
No, I think that's amazing. What I so I know you've got the album coming out soon.
Yeah,
What is
well,
next for you?
probably what we're trying to figure out, like I said, which route to take at the moment. We're either going to
Mhm.
stay independent or go to the record companies, and that's why we've sort of held back on the album for a little bit. But I'm going back in the studio May 1st with Chris again. I've got I guess you could call it the Cole catalog. I've got like so many songs that I wrote for
Mhm.
so many years, but they need to be quote unquote updated.
No, I think that's completely fair enough. Well, I
Yeah.
just have one more question left for you. It's just, have you got any advice for any musicians starting out? Like, you're really passionate about music. What's the one thing that you would tell them to like help?
Yeah. I'll give you the advice that my grandfather said. Two
Mhm.
things. The first one was don't ever grow old, which he meant, I
Mhm.
guess, up here, right? And the
Yeah.
second one is don't wait for anything because it's not coming.
Yeah.
Look after your own stuff. Be aware of what you need to get done. Make a plan for yourself. I mean, the music is important, but a lot of guys will get, yeah, but I'm not that type of guy. Yeah, but you have to be if you want to get your music out there. That's all there is to it.
Mhm.
You've got to have a bit of a business mind about how you're going to put things out and how you're going to do it. And just be yourself as much as you can because eventually you'll find your sound, what your
Mhm.
sound is. It's got your trademark to it,
Yeah.
your stamp on it. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
once you find that, stick with it. And no matter how many people tell you don't listen to them.
No, I think that's good advice. I think you
Yeah,
have to stay true to who you are to be able to
yeah,
get
I
somewhere.
agree. Yeah,
Fair enough.
I agree.